Stand Up.
Hello, you press play on a Thursday episode of Stand Up, which means that we will be hanging out. I'll be hosting the Stand Up with Pete Dominic weekly hangout at 8 p.m. tonight, if you're listening on the 17th of October. If you are a paid subscriber, you'll get an email with a link to it, and I can't wait to see you. If you missed it, hey, I hope we had a great time. I'm sure that we did, but now it's time to get to today's show, featuring the great Jeff Jarvis, who we talk about his new book with, and so much more. Really excited anytime I get to talk to Jeff Jarvis, and that conversation begins at 25 minutes. But I've got your headlines and clips coming your way right now. I am a little late today because I was out last night in New York City where my daughters attended the Billie Eilish concert. You know Billie Eilish, great performer, artist, singer, songwriter. She is performing at Madison Square Garden for a few nights this week, and my older daughter Ava said she wanted to bring my younger daughter Julia, her sister and best friend, to the concert. I made it happen, got Julia into the city. They had an amazing time, and I had a couple drinks with our friend Dr. Christina Greer during the concert. So shout out to Chrissy. We had a great time. Thank you for meeting up with me. And the girls had a really special, unique night to remember at this awesome concert. But I'm a little late this morning. But nonetheless, here I am with your headlines and your clips and an awesome conversation with Jeff Jarvis. So let's get after it, to it, on it, in it, and all about it. Starting with the presidential campaign, which I cannot believe is happening, and there are just 19 days until the election. I'm planning to be in Michigan next week. I think I get there on Monday, so looking forward to connecting with my Michiganders. If you live in Michigan, email me, standupwithpete@gmail.com. Hopefully I'll cross paths with the Harris campaign. She was on Fox News last night with Brett Baer. Lots to play for you there. She did an amazing job. Trump, for his part, the disgraced former president, took questions from Hispanic voters at a town hall hosted by Fox News, and it was, as you can imagine, a disgrace. Jimmy Carter cast his ballot for Kamala Harris yesterday, which is pretty awesome. And now to some other headlines. Yesterday, the Supreme Court's conservative majority appeared to side with the city of San Francisco in its argument to the court that the Environmental Protection Agency's water regulations are too vague. The case could have sweeping implications on the government's ability to curtail pollution. New York Times says at its core, the case was about the Clean Water Act of 1972, which allows the EPA to impose generic prohibitions on wastewater release in the Pacific Ocean and to penalize the city. San Francisco, often considered a liberal bastion, was joined by mining and oil industry groups. I need to talk to somebody about this. Separately, by the way, the Supreme Court temporarily cleared the way for the EPA to limit carbon emissions by power plants. So that's very interesting. And I definitely want to learn more about that one. Now let's go to some international news. Yesterday, the Italian Senate passed a law that criminalizes seeking surrogacy abroad. The new law, pushed by their prime minister, a woman who's a conservative and loves to uphold patriarchy, I think it's fair to say. Anyway, they said the conservative government said it would protect women's dignity, while critics see it as yet another crackdown by the government on LGBT families, as the law will make it virtually impossible for gay fathers to have children. Surrogacy already illegal in Italy, but the government of Prime Minister Giorgia Meloni has vowed to broaden the ban to punish Italians who seek it in other countries where it is legal, like in parts of the United States. Terrible. North Korea, Pyongyang has been sending military engineers and soldiers to fight alongside Russian troops in Ukraine. I think I mentioned that. The president of Ukraine, Volodymyr Zelensky, pitched his victory plan, which he said could end the war by next year, to the Ukrainian parliament. In Nigeria, a fuel tanker overturned and exploded, killing more than 140 people, many of whom had gathered to scoop up spilled gasoline. Oh, horrific. And a police officer who stashed fentanyl in a Bronx daycare that killed one child and poisoned 3 others last year was sentenced to 45 years in prison. How about that? That's where that came from. Don't go to that daycare. That's the point. Apparently, recent hurricanes have spurred pet adoptions nationwide. I think that's a happy story, but amid major disasters, shelter animals are often sent to other states and people are more likely to foster and adopt. The Archdiocese of Los Angeles reached a an $880 million child sex abuse settlement over hundreds of claims. It's the largest single child sex abuse settlement within the Catholic Archdiocese. And it's a bigger story that I think is getting attention, but I always want to mention those ones. Unbelievable. Or completely believable. All right, well, there's a few very tough headlines to hear in today's news, so sorry about that. But a reminder, those are the aberrations. Those are the things that don't happen every day. That's why they're news. I'm looking forward to hanging out with this amazing group of people that I've gotten to know and love and respect and care so much about tonight. This group of people who is constantly loving and thoughtful with each other each and every day in infinite ways. That's us. That's most people. That's the news. Now, here's what I got for you in the audio clips section. First, I've been watching a lot of debates as a way to prepare for the debate that I had, which was not great. And it's out if you want to watch it, by the way, with Jimmy Fallon for Open to Debate. I watched a whole bunch of debates, and I got to be a fan of this kid, Destiny. I don't know why I say he's a kid. He's not much younger than me. But he's acerbic, he's smart, he's witty, he's angry, and I love watching him. He's all over YouTube. He's got huge following, and he was debating he'll debate apparently anybody because he debates all kinds of crazy people. He was debating this InfoWars guy, the Alex Jones guy, and I just thought this was an interesting point and an interesting moment and an important point if you ever hear it come up. So I wanted to share this with you from that debate. It's brief, but it's
First of all, what cities are so expensive to live in? Democrat-run cities.
So when those cities are expensive, do you acknowledge that those cities produce more economic output for the country than all the red cities? This is what I mean when I say these people don't live in reality. But, why can't you acknowledge that?
It's a nice deflection. So Democrat cities are the most expensive to live in, so I'm glad you at least acknowledge that. And again,
more expensive to live in the U.S. than Uganda as well, right? It is, right?
We live in a constitutional republic. We don't live in a democracy.
What is the contradiction there? What do you think? Hold on. What is a republic and what is a democracy?
A democracy is where a bunch of lunatics like you can vote away my rights.
Is that Article 5 or Article 6? I don't know what part of the Constitution.
So you asked what a democracy was.
So a democracy is when multiple people vote. A republic is when you have representatives that do things for you. We are a representative democracy. That's why we're a constitutional republic. We are both a republic, which just means you're not a monarchy, and a democracy. This idea that we must be a republic because I'm a Republican and we're not a democracy because you're a Democrat is... Come on.
Yeah, just in case you ever hear that dumb argument, there you go. All right, well, Colin Allred, speaking of debates, destroyed Ted Cruz. It was amazing. I hope you've seen the clips at this point. We'll probably watch, play, and talk about some of them, as well as Kamala Harris's interview with Bret Baier on Fox News, which was absolutely a knockout, in my opinion. But here is Colin Allred doing just that to Ted Cruz in what was probably the most widely played best moment of the debate, and there were a lot of them. But in case you hadn't heard it, here it is.
I have to say, you can't be for the mob on January 6th and for the officers. You can't. And it's not funny because you're a threat to democracy. Sure. I was on the House floor when we went through the votes. I remember when you objected to the results in Arizona. Y'all at home might remember where you were on January 6th, what you were doing. I know where I was and I know where he was. I remember when they told us to reach under our seats for these gas masks. I didn't know we had because they had deployed tear gas in the rotunda. The officers locked all the doors. We barred the doors the president walks through to deliver the State of the Union with furniture that we usually use to hold paper. And I texted my wife, Allie, who was 7 months pregnant with our son, Cameron, and at home with our son, Jordan, who wasn't yet 2. Whatever happens, I love you. And I took off my suit jacket, and I was prepared to defend the House floor from the mob. At the same time, after he'd gone around the country lying about the election, after he'd been the architect of the attempt to overthrow that election, when that mob came, Senator Cruz was hiding in a supply closet. And that's okay. I don't want him to get hurt by the mob. I really don't. This election is his accountability. You cannot just be patriotic when your side wins. If for the first time in 250 years, this project of ours, this shared American project, that we did not have a peaceful transfer of power, the folks responsible have to be held accountable. That's why Liz Cheney has endorsed me, has got involved in this campaign, and is saying to Texans everywhere, do not put Ted Cruz back in a position of authority. Because he's done it once, he'll do it again.
Oh, so good. So very, very good. You know what? Let me give you one more.
And I know that our border communities are real places where folks are trying to raise their families and get ahead. But time and again, Senator Cruz treats our border communities like he's going on some kind of a safari. He comes down, he puts on his outdoor clothes, he tries to look tough. And he goes back to Washington and does nothing to help. In fact, he does worse than nothing. When the toughest border security bill in a generation came up in the United States Senate, $20 billion for border security, he said, we don't need a border bill. That's what he said. And, listen, this is a pattern for him. He's never there for us when we need him. When the lights went out in the energy capital of the world, he went to Cancun. On January 6th, when a mob was storming the Capitol, he was hiding in a supply closet. And when the toughest border security bill in a generation came up in the United States Senate, he took it down. We don't have to have a senator like this.
No, we don't. I hope Colin Allred wins in Texas. I hope Wajid Ali wins in life because I love him. He was on yesterday's show. And after he talked to me, he went over to Piers Morgan's ubiquitous show, and he was on a panel with two right-wingers, including that Tim Pool guy who got money from Russia, whether he knew it or not. Waj was awesome in this rip, and I want to play that for you right now.
Piers, can I say something?
Yeah, it's bringing Vajah, yeah.
Sure. It's not TDS when General Milley, the former top general who's retired, openly said that Donald Trump is a, quote, total fascist. It's not TDS when Donald Trump literally over the weekend said he will unleash the military against U.S. citizens. It's not TDS when Donald Trump last week in Aurora openly said that he will invoke the Alien Sedition Act that interned Japanese Americans during World War II. This is not TDS when he, to this day, refuses, he's been asked multiple times, will you accept the 2024 results? He's not said yes each and every single time. He still does not accept the 2020 results. And he said, his words, that he will be a dictator for a day and he will terminate the Constitution. It is the failure of corporate media and also social media and also several influential people on YouTube for the past 4 years have not raised the threat and have done a both sides analysis where we've given Donald Trump a pass and promoted hateful talking points and conspiracy theories. And yes, some individuals and outlets have been paid by Russia. It has been confirmed. They have been unwitting agents of Russia, whether they realize it or not. Tim Pool and a lot of his friends, unfortunately, this is true. Now, I don't know if Tim knew it. He says he didn't. But this is the disinformation that has come out in the past 4 years, which is why, in part, Piers, there is such lack of information and knowledge about the facts, which is why so many voters think that Donald Trump won the 2020 election.
Listen. For the purpose...
All right, there you go. Loved it. Waj, very, very good. Now, here's the president. Joe Biden yesterday at a rally for Kamala Harris. I thought this was a good 45 seconds. Joe Biden sounding strong and cogent.
Let me tell you something. You can't be pro-insurrection and pro-American. If you can't announce January 6th, you have no business being president. And look, Trump hasn't changed. I would argue he's gotten worse. Clearly, he lost the election in 2020. He snapped. No, I mean it. He become unhinged. Look at his rallies. Last night, his rallies stopped taking questions because someone got hurt. And guess what? He stood on the stage for 30 minutes and danced. I'm serious. What's wrong with this guy?
I love it. What's wrong with this guy? All right, yesterday, also, let's go to Pennsylvania, where Kamala Harris was joined by over 100 Republican leaders from across the state and across the country who are supporting her. And here's what she had to say in about 2 minutes after many of them spoke.
So I am joined today by over 100 Republican leaders from across Pennsylvania and across our country who are supporting my candidacy for President of the United States. And I am deeply honored to have their support. Some served in state houses, some in the United States Congress, some worked for other Republican presidents and presidential nominees, including Mitt Romney, John McCain, George W. Bush, George H.W. Bush, and Ronald Reagan. And some today served in Donald Trump's own administration. We also have with us Republican voters from here in Pennsylvania and beyond who have been active in their Republican parties for years, who have supported Republican candidates up and down the ticket. Now, I say all that to make an obvious point. In a typical election year, you all being here with me might be a bit surprising, dare I say unusual. But not in this election. Not in this election. Because at stake in this race are the democratic ideals that our founders and generations of Americans before us have fought for. At stake in this election is the Constitution of the United States, its very self. We are here today because we share a core belief that we must put country before party.
Country over party, that was the theme yesterday. Here is Adam Kinzinger, a well-known Republican who also supports Kamala Harris.
Believe that those values are worth defending. And if you think those principles are worth defending, I urge you to make the conservative choice. Vote for our bedrock values and vote for Kamala Harris. God bless you.
All right, there you go. There's a little of Adam Kinzinger yesterday. And now let's get to those clips from Fox News in case you hadn't heard them, and it's worth, I think, hearing them again. Here's probably the best moment of the interview. A lot of people are saying here is Kamala Harris pushing back on Bret Baier for playing the wrong clip about Donald Trump. Well, you heard it. Here it is. If you haven't heard it, I don't think it needs any more setup.
If he's as bad as you say, that half of this country is now supporting this person who could be the 47th president of the United States, why is that happening?
This is an election for president of the United States. It's not supposed to be easy.
I know, but
it's not supposed to be. It is not supposed to be a cakewalk for anyone.
So are they misguided, the 50%? Are they stupid? What is it?
I would never say that about the American people. And in fact, if you listen to Donald Trump, if you watch any of his rallies, he's the one who tends to demean and belittle and diminish the American people. He's the one who talks about an enemy within, an enemy within, talking about the American people, suggesting he would turn the American military on the American people.
We asked that question to the former president today. Harris Faulkner had a town hall, and this is how he responded.
I heard about that. They were saying I was like threatening. I'm not threatening anybody. They're the ones doing the threatening. They do phony investigations. I've been investigated more than Alphonse Capone. He was the greatest gangster. No, it's true. But think of it. It's called weaponization of government. It's a terrible thing.
So,
Brett, I'm sorry, and with all due respect, that clip was not what he has been saying about the enemy within that he has repeated when he's speaking about the American people. That's not what you just showed.
Well, he was asked about that specific...
No, that's not what you just showed. In all fairness and respect to you...
that was the question that we asked him.
He didn't show that, and here's the bottom line. He has repeated it many times, and you and I both know that. And you and I both know that he has talked about turning the American military on the American people. He has talked about going after people who are engaged in peaceful protest. He has talked about locking people up because they disagree with him. This is a democracy. And in a democracy, the President of the United States, in the United States of America, should be willing to be able to handle criticism without saying he'd lock people up for doing it. And this is what is at stake, which is why you have someone like the former chairman of the Joint Chiefs of Staff saying what Mark Milley has said about Donald Trump being a threat to the United States of America.
He's quoted in the Bob Woodward book that way, yes. Let me.
All right, there you go. He's quoted in the Bob Woodward. All right, there you go. Kamala Harris doing, I think, a great job in that moment. And the rest of the interview with Bret Baier on Fox News. I think you should go listen to all of it. If you hadn't, we'll talk about it at tonight's Hangout. And finally, I've got some comedy for you from Jimmy Kimmel on ABC last night. Let's do it.
Why? Why remain on stage for 39 minutes? Just Pretend it was one of Don Jr.'s piano recitals and leave. Go home. Trump's director of communications was quick to put a positive spin on this. He wrote, "Total love fest at the Pennsylvania town hall. Everyone was so excited they were fainting, so real Donald Trump turned to music." It was a love fest. It wasn't a fire fest. It was a love fest. I want you to imagine a world in which Kamala Harris stood there at a rally and said nothing, just danced around for almost 40 minutes. Fox News would have blocked out a full week to cover it. It would have been like the O.J. Chase meets 9/11 at once. But when Trump does it, it's a love fest. Many are now seriously questioning whether Trump is healthy enough to be running for president. So what does he do? Well, he does what he always does. He questions whether his opponent is healthy enough to be running for president. Dr. Doolittlehands was up attacking Kamala's medical records at 12:43 a.m. He wrote, "She suffers from urticaria, defined as a rash of round red welts on the skin that itch intensely, sometimes with dangerous swelling," also known as hives, by the way. She also has allergic rhinitis and allergic conjunctivitis, a very messy and dangerous situation. These are deeply serious conditions that clearly impact her functioning. No, those are hives and hay fever. Allergic rhinitis is hay fever. And allergic conjunctivitis is when you get red eyes from hay fever. Both very serious. You can't be president with hay fever. What if the Russians bombard the White House with hay? My God, you'd have to bring in SEAL Team Zyrtec. Trump actually knows a lot about skin conditions. He suffers from having the thinnest skin of any person ever. And this is his excuse for why he hasn't released his medical report. He wrote, "I put out more medical exams than any other president in history." Not true. And aced 2 cognitive exams. The doctor stated that my cognitive exams were exceptional. I am far healthier than Clinton, Bush, Obama, Biden, but especially Kamala. Also, I am far too busy campaigning to take time from the 22 days left, as I'm using every hour of every day campaigning. Last night, he spent 39 minutes dancing on stage for no reason, but he's spending every minute. Dr. Demental was off the charts this morning. He wrote, "Kamala's medical report is really bad. My report is perfect. No problems." And it's in all caps, so that means it's true, right? I mean, we can see that you're fat, right? I mean, we can see your body. This guy, he wasn't healthy enough to be in the military during the draft, but 60 years later, he's the healthiest man alive. He's perfect. And while he is too busy to release his medical records, Scammy Hagar did have time today to launch his own cryptocurrency, the World Liberty Fund token, WLF, or Wolf for short, as in this is a wolf in sheep's tokens. Trump's son Eric is running the fund. He's officially now America's very own Nigerian prince.
I love it. And so much more. I could listen to more. I did listen to more, but then I cut out just that clip. I don't know what I'm talking about. That's it. That's all I've got for you in headlines and clips. It's now time to get to my guest. I can't do any of it without your paid subscription. Go to patreon.com/Pete Dominick right now. All right. He's a journalist, a professor, a public speaker, a television critic, a critic of media, and a huge supporter of the open web and internet, and has been making this argument for a long time about social and personal benefits to living in a more public life on the internet, which is partly, or a lot of what his new book is about. The Web We Weave, Why We Must Reclaim the Internet from Moguls, Misanthropes, and Moral Panic. We love Jeff Jarvis. Anytime he joins us, it's a treat. Today was no exception. I hope you'll get this book and support him everywhere you can find Jeff's work. Buzzmachine.com. You can find him online. Always great essays and more about Jeff there. All right, let's do it with the always awesome Jeff Jarvis. Oh, and I left this part of small talk in before I was officially recording the interview because I thought it was funny. Doing all right, hanging in there. I turn 49 in a couple weeks.
Oh, geez. Uncle Pete.
Halloween. Do you have any advice for me?
I read The Guardian today and found out that there are 15 different kinds of orgasms. And I think now they tell me. No time left to find it.
All right. That was before the interview. Now is the official start of our conversation on the record. Trailer, and now I have him talking to me. That him is the great Jeff Jarvis, Professor Jarvis, as I refer to him. I'm so happy to see you. Thank you for joining me.
Thank you for having me. I'm always honored.
It's a huge deal for you, I know. You've hopefully been getting a lot of calls and invites to talk about your new book, The Web We Weave, Why We Must Reclaim the Internet from Moguls, Misanthropes, and Moral Panic. What a great title.
Love it. Alliteration's a great thing.
It really is. I've never been good at it off the cuff, but certainly if you give me a moment to think about it, it sounds a lot better.
Yeah, no, I need the publicity, Pete. That's why I'm here. I think it's gotten one review so far in Christianity Today, which I'm not reading because it was negative. And the problem is that I'm saying nice things about the internet and bad things about media.
Yeah, that's why
either people are going to discover it this way,
I'm here to challenge you on the nice things you're saying about the internet, which has destroyed society in every way.
No, podcasts have.
Yeah, we'll get to podcasts. It's destroyed society in every way. Just last night, I wasn't reading a book, but was on TikTok. What do you have to say for yourself? We don't read anymore because of the internet. We read short form and it's destroying our brain. You can't defeat my argument on that, Jeff Jarvis. I just made it up.
I'm sorry, I lost a train of thought. I was going to start.
Was I weaving?
No, it hasn't. No, I find all kinds of wonderful people and amazing things on the internet, and including TikTok, by the way, so I hope it doesn't get killed, and connections with people and perspectives around the world that I wouldn't otherwise get. And it's fine to have books. I have one. I'll happily sell it to you. But that is a world where people have to go through a gauntlet of big, old power from people who look like us, old white men. You're about to get older. And the internet enables voices too long not heard that have always been there to finally have their stage and have their microphone. And for that, I celebrate it. Are there problems with the internet? Yeah, of course there are, but they're human problems. It didn't make us hate. We brought our hate to it. It didn't make us stupid. Whatever stupidities we had, we already had. I even argue that it brought along a culture of fact, because before we couldn't get facts easily. We had to drive to the library. Now we expect them to be at our fingertips in seconds. It brought us through the pandemic, without of which we would have been screwed. And yes, we need to fix things, and yes, we need to make it better, but damn it, I can't imagine turning it off.
Is anybody proposing turning it off? Can you turn it off? In certain countries, they can turn it off. They can slow it down, right?
Yeah. Yeah, Pakistan, I think, is slowed down right now. All the time, how many stories have you seen from a-hole journalists who say, I gave up the internet for a week and my life is so much better?
You say you don't think that's true of those people's experiences, those who go to camp for the summer and they put their phone away and they feel less stress and more happiness and all those kinds of outcomes?
No, it's exactly, they are descendants of the assholes who used to say either, I don't own a television or I only watch PBS.
Yeah, or who reference the New Yorker to this day all the time, which I love. I love the New Yorker, don't get me wrong. I guess I've become that guy, to be honest with you.
When was the last time you actually read an issue of the New
Yorker? I subscribe to it. I read the articles. I actually don't read them, though, but because of the internet, I listen to them be read to me by an actor.
See? It's making you dumb.
What do you say to those who would say that the internet makes a lie travel so much faster and it popularizes and normalizes hate? The good kind, the real old school kind. It makes everybody feel like, oh, I'm not alone in my hatred in my town. There's a whole bunch of people all over the world that think the way I think about whites being better.
The opposites are true as well. Fact-checking and truth travels faster as well. And it also enables communities who otherwise couldn't find each other to find themselves. If you're an LGBTQ kid in a small town, you now realize you're not alone either. My theory about all of this, which I promulgate in my prior book, The Gutenberg Parenthesis, still on sale, coming out in paperback next month, is, sorry for the plug, is that what the internet did more than anything else to affect our age is that it enabled voices who, as I said before, were always there but weren't heard in mainstream white mass media to at last be heard. And the people who controlled that medium and the stage resent it. And they would rather burn the fields than share the crops with those who follow. And that is my theory about what's happening that led to January 6th. My argument is that Black Lives Matter is the Martin Luther of our day. It is a racial reformation calling, and the counter-reformation is January 6th. And that's the fight we're having right now. is about enabling more voices and viewpoints and perspectives and experience to be heard and not to be able to control them. And so that, more than anything else, is why I think it's necessary to defend the freedoms of the internet. Not the corporations, but the freedoms.
It's just really important, that point you just made, leaving now alone my criticism of the arguments that you make in your brand new book, which is great. The web we weave, talking to Jeff Jarvis, of course, is that Black Lives Matter, you just explained it perfectly. It was the ongoing civil rights movement. It was picking up where the generation before left off. It was really interesting, fascinating, and important. Black Lives Matter still is, obviously, and the organizers around it and what they're demanding and wanting and asking for and protesting for. And the reaction to it was the, quote, anti-wokeness. And I think it's really important that people see it that way. I think a scholarly study would be able to come to the conclusion that what we're seeing is so much of a reaction to Black folks demanding they be heard, demanding all of the issues that they wanted in that movement. And the same is true of the civil rights and human rights movement, gay rights movement as well. There's always this reaction to it. And that's really where we are. Jeff, just to pick up on that, right now in the campaign with the black woman versus the white guy, there's so much of what I just mentioned, what you brought up, that's animating all of it, underpinning all of it, still seems.
Yeah, and I've been having visible fits of late about the bad coverage of the New York Times, the Washington Post, CNN, and the old institutional media. And they're not covering the essential story here. And the essential story, I'll call it two things, is fascism and racism. And they refuse to call it that way. So if you look back to the Springfield Dogs and Cats, Jamel Bowie was the one person, and he is at the New York Times, who on TikTok, which you decried earlier, who explained Springfield as blood libel. It is nothing but that, and it is a purely a of race and Trump going after race, and it is a technique of totalitarianism, authoritarianism, and fascism. And the Times refuses to cover the story that way. Even after General Milley said that Trump is fascist to the core, they buried that, quote, 25 paragraphs into a story. The Post, because it's Bob Woodward, covered a little bit more, but they're both, I think, not doing a terribly good job. And CNN and NPR are gutless as well. So they're thus missing the story of their lifetimes, of our lifetimes. This is the most important story there is, but they don't understand the need to explain and to have those perspectives that otherwise wouldn't be there. And that's because they don't have the perspectives in their newsroom.
I followed everything you just said, but what is that story? What would those be headlines look like if you were the editor at the Times or elsewhere?
It would be constant evidence of racism and fascism. It would be explaining what fascism is. It would be bringing historians and I'm a fake academic, I'm just a journalism teacher, I don't have a PhD, but to bring people who actually have studied media and understand what's happening and understand history and sociology and political science and so on. And if you did that, if you reread Hannah Arendt, you will find the parallels. History doesn't repeat itself, but history has lessons. That this is how totalitarians act. And that what happened, I quote her from The Origins of Totalitarianism often on this, is that she says that the essence of what made fascism possible in Europe was that people were alienated from their own communities. They were isolated and alone. And I don't mean loneliness in the way the Surgeon General is talking about. Incels can't get dates. A profound loneliness.
Don't dismiss the Surgeon General's warning about loneliness. That was an important warning that you just minimized.
Okay. We'll come back to that. But the loneliness that Arendt talks about is being so isolated from your community, your nation, that you become vulnerable to the siren call of hate and fear brought on by the fascists. And even the elites are happy to see society destroyed for the joy of that, she says. And so how do we get a society? So I come to think that I was wrong after 2016 when I raised a bunch of money to do things about fact-checking and disinformation. And I don't think the problem is information. I don't think the problem is believing. When people say nutty shit to pollsters, they're signaling their loyalty. These are loyal. To say that you believe people are eating cats and dogs is a loyalty oath. And so the problem underlying all of that, I think, is one of belonging. And I don't know how to remake a journalism of belonging. I don't understand how to engineer that. But to think that if we just say, no, we fact check and nobody's eating cats and dogs in Springfield, that you can stop there? No, you've got to go to the next step to say, how the hell did this come about and what does it really say? And the origins of it are racism and the origins of it are fascism. And that explanation should be in the paper from scholars every day, but it's
Is it really never there? Are they never citing, you mentioned Hannah Arendt, but Timothy Snyder, Ruth Ben-Ghiat, my friend Kenneth C. Davis, any number of historians and experts, Jason Stanley, all these people that you and I both respect and admire and been reading, and they've been pretty much predicting what would happen and then constantly comparing the playbook today with what we saw in fascism of the earliest 20th century. And are they really not, you're saying as a critic of, in this case, the Times or anywhere else, they're really not referencing that enough, or they're not framing it correctly enough?
Right. I think it's the framing, A. B, yeah, they can get op-eds in the paper. And I value Timothy Snyder and Ruth Ben-Ghiat immensely. And whenever they're on TV, I cheer and I learn from them. And so, yes, they're important voices, but I don't think that influences the essence of how this story is covered. They'll get quoted now and again. They'll get op-eds in, but you'll still see. And the other day, a week ago or so, Peter Baker finally did the story about Trump's craziness, but he attributed it to age, which would presume that every grandpa is a Nazi in waiting, right? That everything that Trump does is just a matter of senility. No, there's something much deeper going on here that they don't want. The F word they don't want to use is whether they even just this morning, Joe Scarborough, who drives us both nuts on some days and we like on most days, he uses the word fascism.
You mentioned Scarborough, but you're talking about the Times specifically. MSNBC arguably made Ruth Ben-Ghiat well known. A lot of other networks.
Yeah, they're our salvation. MSNBC is, even if they haven't had me on the air in 3 years, and I'm very bitter about it and pissed off. And if you know any bookers, tell them I'm still a nice guy. Yeah, MSNBC I watch constantly. But my fear, Pete, is that as someone we both know, I won't name, said to me once, it's still a Republican company, Jeff. And the reason MSNBC exists is a market opportunity. It's not CNN. It's not Fox. What's left for us? Okay, we'll have a liberal network. But I fear it's
I think those things are both can be true, at least, because I just feel like they're constantly talking at 8, 9, 10 about fascism, and they have been since before 2016. All these experts. Absolutely. I'm thinking of what made me think of it is Velshi has Timothy Snyder on all the time, and all kinds of others as well who are experts on everything that we're talking about.
But CNN doesn't do the same. NPR
well, Jake Tapper
tweeted.
Did he tweet or did he put up on the screen the definition of fascism about 400 hours before the election? He called it.
There are people in every one of these institutions. There are great journalists at the New York Times and the Washington Post and CNN, not Fox, and they try. But I think that the culture of these newsrooms and their expectations is off. And I wonder why. I wrote about this a little while ago. I have a few theories. People come to me on Twitter all the time when I complain about, I have hashtag.
Yeah, did you do that? Is that yours? Yeah, I like it. Broken Time.
That's me. And Murdoch Journal. And there's the occasional broken CNN in there.
I love it.
But I don't really watch it because I watch MSNBC. People come to me all the time. The Times is in the bag for Trump. No, they want him to win. I don't think that's true. I think that's simplistic. Or Sulzberger is just a rich guy and he wants lower taxes, so he wants Trump to win. That's stupid. There's something deeper and more insidious.
I fully agree with
here.
Both those points, by the way. Yeah, go ahead.
And so one theory I have is that it's about the death of mass media, which I wrote about in my prior book, the Gutenberg parenthesis, plug number 3, and that they're panicked because they realize that age is over and they're being replaced by a multitude of choice. But it ties into another theory. My friend Jay Rosen at New York University wrote in 2017 in his very thoughtful way. He said, now that the primary support of the New York Times has shifted from advertising to readers and subscriptions, this is going to have an impact on the relationship of the newsroom to the public, and I wonder what that will be. And I think we're seeing that now. So my theory, added on to his, is that when A.G. Sulzberger talks about independence, independent from whom? Advertisers? No, they're not important anymore. Politics? Yeah, obviously. I think what they're doing is saying we must be independent from our readers. That every time we piss off liberals, we're saying, see, you don't own us. And you see this all the time when they say, basically, if we piss off everybody, it's okay. I recorded a conversation which hasn't come out as a podcast yet on Question Everything podcast with David Folkenflik at NPR. And we were brought in to go at each other because I've been criticizing. I think David's wonderful. I think he's really good. I think he's done great coverage over many years. But I've argued that just as the papers are missing the story of our lifetimes, as a media critic, he's missing the story of our media lifetime, which is the liberal anger at the New York Times and the Washington Post. And I think this is phenomenal. Conservatives have always been mad at them and want to kill them and call them fake news. But now liberals, people like us, get disappointed and angry and fearful at the results of the coverage we're seeing. And I think that's a big story. And I think it's uncovered, and it's bound to be uncovered because media doesn't cover itself.
I can't wait to hear you on that show, Question Everything with David Folkenflik and Jeff Jarvis. It sounds like a must listen. I'm trying to figure out when that.
We'll see how they edited it. We did 2 hours. And so radio guy in front of a microphone, they tend to.
I just did my first ever official debate in my career against another comedian about Kamala versus Trump.
I saw you were going to do that. How'd it go?
I was terrible because I had no idea what I was doing or how to behave. I was shrill and angry and not funny enough. But I also think it's a very hard thing to do because you're talking about completely different truths and values, and we're at a place now where people openly argue, which is bizarre to me. It really is, especially with quote conservatives, that character doesn't matter. And so I got lost. I don't know how to argue against someone who doesn't think character matters. There's a way to do it. I don't know how to do it. I was bad.
Where did they find an allegedly funny conservative?
Yes, there's a real truth about the brand that Greg Gutfeld has created, and he's an acolyte of his. Jimmy Fallon, he sits in for Gutfeld. That's how similar that.
Gutfeld is just.
I started my first cable TV appearance that really definitely helped me a lot was because I did it so many times was on Red Eye. And with Greg Gutfeld. And I totally get his humor. He made me laugh lots of times with his reactions and weird behavior. But it was so often about innocuous things back then at 3 a.m. And even when it was like offensive, it was still funny. But now I don't get it. I understand who he's catering to, but it's just very lowbrow. And making gay jokes, like making jokes that to be gay is to be less than, is in kind of mainstream comedy and younger folks. It doesn't fly. It's like it's not that funny because it's not a put down so much anymore.
But that's exactly the point. That's being anti-woke is the point.
Yeah, but it's not. It's just not very interesting. Those types of we all did those jokes already. Like for the history of comedy, we made fun of and put down gay people, and we're still doing it. And it still has a tendency to be funny, and certainly a lot of gay comedians do it. But it's just. We're a little past it in terms of humor. It moves, things move. Society moves. And white people making jokes about black people hasn't been good for a long time. It just hasn't been funny for a long time. Black people can make them and they kill. They're great. And you can make them if you're not punching down. Like I'll go into a black room, but I'm mostly making fun of white people. And if I make fun of them, they know I'm doing it in good nature, whether or not white people wash their legs. For example, is a big dispute in my community here on stand-up. Whether or not you need to wash your legs, rather, is a very divisive issue culturally, apparently.
I've been figuring out how to express this, and so I haven't, so I'll do it with you. What do they want? The right wing. It seems like all they want is destruction. Yeah, you could say power and you could say other things, but if they get into power, what's the goal? It's the nattering nabobs of nihilism. It's trying to destroy everything for the sake of its destruction, trying to offend for the sake of offense, to say, see, I can get away with that. I can do that. But then what? I don't if we're trying to understand the others, and I think there's a limit to what we should try to do and understand the circumstances, even at my most generous, it's hard for me to say what the hell they want. And I come back to Hannah Arendt again. I think that I wonder whether the nation like Germany has to be cauterized before it can move
feel
forward.
like I don't agree with that based specifically on my local school board fight experience. The question is, what do they want? I think they want total control so that they can prevent change. That's what the people in my community want. They're very worried about trans kids, specifically that obviously I think if you get to the root of it, that you're somehow able to make their kid gay or trans, even worse. And
in only one class. It's amazing how quickly it can happen.
It's just one.
Phenomenal how you can go to school one morning and you got the beat force and you come back and
you're being
dressed.
cynical. It takes about a week. And although I've known people to go gay in under an hour and 6 Bud Lights, and I don't certainly know anybody personally that has done that in the late 90s at a steam room in the Equinox. But they want control, so they want to take over everything and prevent change, and they want to prevent new people with new ideas like immigrants from coming in. And I think they're genuinely scared because they're told to be scared of all the terrible people and things that they're doing, as opposed to understanding how much enrichment they bring and have a thoughtful conversation about it all. So I think they hate change and demand control to prevent any change, and that's what they want. They're terrified of.
So I'm going to argue that it's paradoxically almost the opposite. That, and I'm quoting from my own book, the Gutenberg Parenthesis, where I quoted a scholar named Nisbet, I'm forgetting his first name suddenly, who tried to look at the definitions of conservative. Right? And my theory here is that it's reversed. That what we have happening today is that conservatives it's not that they want to stop change, quite the contrary. The change has already occurred and they resent the hell out of it. Right. And they want to go back. And so they want to destroy any change that has occurred. They want to destroy the institutions that have enabled and protect that change that has occurred. And so we have this weird situation where conservatives used to be those who wanted to conserve institutions. Now conservatives are those who want to destroy institutions, putting progressives in the position of having to defend the institutions that they always wanted to change and make progressive. And so the roles have oddly reversed.
Yeah,
and so we liberals become conservative in that sense, in that we are in the institutions that are now under attack by the people formerly known as conservatives who are destructive.
It makes a lot of sense, and I think it's really interesting. But when you say that they want to destroy, they want to go back and bring back the past, I think that's true. But I also think at the same time, they want to prevent the new movement from occurring. So in my town, they want to put people back in the closet, but gay folks, but they want to get rid of rainbow flags and get rid of any advancement in any book that might enlighten. But they also want to prevent progress that we are demanding. And so that's one thing. And then in terms of destroying institutions that progressives wanted to make more progressive, I don't know about that. I want to unpack that a little bit more, because one definition I think it's pretty obvious of conservatism, and I think it certainly began in full force under Reagan, which is government is not the solution, it's the problem. That is the most definitive ideology that I think you can ascribe to, or that a conservative themselves would agree that government's the problem. So all those institutions that you're talking about, we have less faith. They especially have less faith in them now. Even the CDC and NOAA and obviously EPA and IRS, they want to destroy them.
Right. So they want to destroy all those institutions. Right. They want to destroy education.
Yeah, they want to privatize it.
They want to destroy
make
science.
It theirs. They want the tax money.
But that's where I fall a little bit apart. Okay, dog, you chase the car. Your teeth are on the fender. Where do you want it to go now? I don't think they have that.
absolutely right, because so often we actually see them take power. Again, sticking with the school board thing, what happens is the Moms for Liberty people get elected to school board, but they're fucking idiots, Jarvis. They have no idea about that the school board, the majority of what it does is all kinds of budgeting and allocating and resources and dealing with a lot of drama as well. And they get in office and they have no idea what to do. And then they lose because they were so bad. And I think it's true of when Republicans are in charge. They're in charge of government. Nothing gets done. They do nothing. One might argue they don't want to.
And that becomes a self-fulfilling prophecy because look at Congress, obviously. To stall Congress and make sure it does nothing is victory.
Yes and no. They absolutely say that, but I think the public doesn't necessarily see that. Most of the public wants Congress to do something. I think they don't realize that what Congress and government does is probably the main problem. Like everybody's bitching about the things that are wrong with the roads and the schools, but they don't realize that's government's role. And so they're just ignorant to the fact of whose responsibility it is, I suppose.
But this also puts me in a difficult position where I'm arguing that as a progressive, I need to defend these institutions from these attacks. And one could say that's my own institution of journalism. But when journalism is doing a shitty job, I think it's incumbent upon us to say so and to hope for it to be better. The difference between right and left is the right wants to destroy news. The left wants to make it better. And we're highly frustrated that they won't listen to those who they should be serving best. And so am I going to help destroy the institution of the New York Times? Impossible. I'm just little old me with my pea shooter. But I really want it to be better. I don't want to destroy it. But I'm depressed that I see things going constantly the wrong way. And Joe Kahn was interviewed on NPR the other day. And finally asked him about liberal anger, but his answer was a defensive nothing, and they didn't follow up. And he just dismisses liberal critique in the paper now.
Yeah, I am not very read into those reactions of what they're saying, but I've heard, I think, from your Twitter feed and Nelson. I think it's great that you're doing that, and that's why I've always admired you so much for doing what you're doing and being who we expect you to be. And you're also not actually a curmudgeon because you're a huge fan of so many people. Like, you lift up so many voices and create opportunity for so many people like Juliet Jeske, me, and plenty of others, especially people of color and women and others. It's easy to say you're a critic and
that's the joy, isn't it? That's what Pete, you're 10 times better than I am. I wouldn't pretend, but that's what you do every day on this podcast. You do it constantly, and that's where the joy is, right? You find people.
Yeah, let me then get to some more of your criticisms and ideas just about what's happening. And it almost feels like this has been such a thoughtful conversation about kind of the philosophy of what and psychology of what we think and why we think, Jeff. But let's get down to just your reaction, your thoughts about some of the political stories or larger trends is what I want to stick with. I always want to ask you just to weigh in on just about everything. But some of this stuff changes so quickly. So I want to try to keep it a little bit more relevant to where we're at. And the question is, how do you think the Harris campaign has done? Would you criticize them or give them any suggestions for in the media strategy or policy proposals or reactions? What have you seen with this candidate and how she is performing on the stump and how the campaign overall is focused on winning in the right places?
I'll give you mine, but I want to hear yours first. I want to hear, especially given the changes in the last, let's say, 2 weeks on media strategy and stuff. How do you think she's doing?
I think it's been amazing. I think every interview, I think in terms of the clips. So my initial thought is great that she's going on this show, Call Her Daddy, Howard Stern. Great that she's going on those shows. I don't know how I feel about going on Joe Rogan. And the reason for that is because I think my next thought is the clips. And the worst clip is what I'm most worried about. I always want a great clip that goes viral of her, saying Trump's a loser and he's weak and or talking, God forbid, about her new Medicare proposal that would actually change people's lives for the better. But I worry about her going on like a Joe Rogan. I do worry about him trying to pin her down and what studies say about vaccines or some bullshit. Is a man, what's a woman, and all the trans stuff. I do worry about that. But overall, I think, just talked with Sam Youngman about this, I think she's done an amazing job and the campaign's done an amazing job at everything they need to do and avoiding the criticisms of CNN and New York Times reporters who are whining that they won't come on with her. Her strategy, I think, is working very well.
So I completely agree. That's why we're friends. I think the campaign, she's been a brilliant campaigner, absolutely brilliant. The campaign has been extraordinarily well run. It's a miracle in the short time that it's occurred. Screw talking to the New York Times and the Washington Post. They don't deserve it, and especially after the way they treated Joe Biden. I think that ignoring them is fine. I think the appearances of late have been great. Charlemagne the God last night was really good. I think Bret Baier tonight will probably be fine. I also don't want her to do Joe Rogan, but I get that it's a gutsy thing to do and says, okay, you assholes are telling me I'm not going in a tough area, then fine. Fox and Joe Rogan, what more do you want? There's no InfoWars anymore. That's where it is. I also think, and this is Nicole Wallace more than anybody else, I think has highlighted the coalition to save democracy that I think is a hugely important and another undercovered story. The fact that the Cheneys et al. Have endorsed and campaigned with Kamala Harris, and no matter how much R.A. Melber tries to have on Trumpist assholes next to these people, like Cassidy Hutchinson and Sarah Matthews, they forge on very bravely standing for democracy. And I think that there is a unprecedented grand coalition occurring right now that Kamala Harris has brought together, and it's phenomenal. My one question, the question I want to come back to you with is, my one wonder is I think that she's done such a good job of opening the tent wide, enabling sensible conservatives to join in this fight, appearing with them and going to places like Fox and maybe even Joe Rogan. The election is all going to be about, in the end, there's no such thing as an undecided voter. They're liars.
I agree.
That's bullshit.
I agree. I'm glad to hear you say that.
So that's
wait. Go ahead and
crap.
just finish your point. We'll come back to undecided voters. Why you think that? Go ahead, though.
Okay. The election's all going to be about turnout and excitement. And we had the campaign of joy is now the campaign of I'll answer every damn question and I'll say the tough things and this is a reality check, people. You better do it. I wonder if in the last 3 weeks does she need to get liberals excited? Any talk about her losing momentum is bullshit. It's crap. Polls are damaging. Don't pay attention to them except to make you nervous. That's fine. But I do wonder what is needed in the last few weeks to get people on the left
what
so
could that
goddamn
be,
jazzed that we will all
what is
show
available
up.
That could be. I can't. Is it an appearance? Is it an event? Is it an initiative? Is it an announcement?
I think you remember when Obama had to make his big speech about race. And she's addressing race and she's addressing fascism. But I wonder whether there's a few big speeches to be made about topics that say the big failure of the Biden administration, not their fault at all, was that voting rights fell away. And it's because of Congress, and they couldn't do anything. But is there a speech that says, yes, we have not done enough? Is there a speech that I don't know.
Does a speech, a great speech, well orchestrated, produced, like just amazingly performed, which I imagine she would, does it cut through? Does it make a difference if it's great, even if it's great?
I think
if
it
it's
does.
On a,
I think it certainly did in the convention. Her speech at the convention was amazing. I think when she started out, it was amazing. But I'm hesitant to maybe shouldn't have even answered the question because I can't stand all of the mansplainers who in one TV hit or one column can say, this is what Kamala Harris needs to do. I'm not doing that. I think she has done.
You are going to hate my new show, Mansplaining with Pete Dominic.
Perfect.
I just get a bunch of young women to sit in the audience. They're highly paid, obviously. That's why they do it. And just to listen to me. You ladies.
Yeah. To tell them what they're doing wrong. They don't understand.
It's just my daughters. They're correcting me the whole time. Going back to undecided, why do you think that there's no such thing and that's bullshit?
Yeah. How can you be awake today in this high contrast and not know
That's
what
my
you're
reaction
doing,
too, and I try to push back on my own reaction, which is some people really don't pay any attention. But then my next answer is, but Trump was already president. If they're voting age, they live through him. So it's not like there's two candidates that they don't know and that they didn't pay attention to. There's no way, but how do I square that? Go ahead.
It also goes to my hatred of polls. And that goes deeper than just thinking that they're bullshit and wrong. They're damaging. And here I always quote the late James Carey of Columbia University, who says that polls preempt the public discourse they are intended to measure. and that they damage democracy. They reveal more about the pollster than about the public. They have an active role because that's what the poll says. I won't bother showing up or whatever the impact may be. They're just simply wrong for society. But I think that when MSNBC comes calling with Frank Luntz, for God's sakes, why are you using Frank Luntz? Both New York Times and MSNBC using him. And when they show up and have a so-called focus group, not a real focus group done by an academic who knows how to do them. I had fits about Elise Jordan's focus groups a few weeks ago. And when she had an all-white focus group, and then when I said it on Twitter, she DM'd me, by the way, and called me a moron and got all mad and went all crazy. Oh, yeah.
I used to know her pretty well back in the day.
Very testy.
15 years ago, shortly after her husband died, she was friends with John and John Avalon and Margaret Hoover, who I was very close friends with. And so we would sometimes go to dinner parties with her. She always seemed really smart and everything. But whatever, it doesn't matter. She called it. What was your issue with it? That
she had a focus group and it was all white people and it was all from these so-called undecideds. And I don't believe them. Right. I think they want the attention. And I think media love them so much because that's what they want to do and act as if that's the essence of what journalism is about. Is there's a few people out there who need to know a little more, and we have the information. If they would just listen to us, then they'll be able to make their own decision, not ours, but theirs. That's how democracy works, aren't we wondering? No.
So good. I fully agree with that. I do. I think it's bullshit, and I think it's both pollsters and people want to get paid to be as part of your group, and they'll say anything.
So that's why I don't think there's really an undecided voter. There could be ignorant voters. You're right, Pete. You're absolutely right. People who haven't paid attention at all, and now's the time to start paying attention, maybe. But are those people really going to show up at the polls and make a difference?
And those people should be able to make a pretty easy decision, too, just by looking at these two people talk for a minute. 1 minute.
Yeah. Or
what did you make of that? What was your reaction to him dancing for 30? Why do you think he did that? Be honest. You're always going to be honest. I don't know why I use that phrase. What was that? That was very...
I think he's losing it. I was driving home last night when you thought I was going to be on the show yesterday. I was in New York doing research, and that's why I wasn't here yesterday. So I was in the car at the time you thought I was going to be on this podcast, and I couldn't watch Nicole Wallace, whom I worship, on TV. But I listened as she played the entire 39 minutes straight, and I wish I'd seen it. But yeah, brilliant. Always there on the side, screen. Played it real time, including the commercial break, just real time. This is 39 minutes. This is what it was like to live through 39 minutes of him bopping. Brilliant, just freaking brilliant.
I thought it was weird for him because I understand his kind of attention deficit to not be stimulated by a person or having a conversation or looking at a thing about him. I was almost impressed with his ability to stand there and not really engage with anybody or anything or look at a phone for that long. But I don't know what it did or why he did that. It seemed like a huge waste of time for the candidate as well. His time is pretty valuable.
I don't think he wanted to answer any more questions.
Okay.
I think he was tired of that and he didn't know how to leave. And then once he started it, I think that he goes off into his own little zone.
That's the answer. He needed to complete the time period that if he had just walked off, said, I don't want to answer any more questions, he would have been criticized for it and by his own people. They would have been like, what you just did 10 minutes, took 2 questions, but instead he's like, no more questions. Let's just dance. I'll be here. And all they care is that I'm here. And then he shook hands and that was it.
But if you were his person, wouldn't you have tried to drag him off stage?
Yeah. Or I would have tried to be like, what are you doing? What's going on here? I don't know. Maybe he told them ahead of time. He's like, you know what? I might just bail and dance. I might just sway.
Because what a good dancer he is. No wonder he has this.
Have you seen
talent he wants to show off?
The 1 billionth video of someone mocking up like cartoon dicks in his hands because he's always doing that motion, and they just put dick. Those are the fun. Those make me laugh like a small boy. So finally, what data point are you seeing? Now, this will be the kind of like granular question that I was going to ask Jarvis because it's a time and just very moment, just 20 days away. What data point are you seeing that makes you feel one way or the other? Because I saw yesterday this clip that went kind of viral of Harry Enton at CNN talking about how much he's lost amongst women, specifically white women. And obviously everything seems to still be about women's reproductive rights, as it should be for most people. Number one concern for a lot of people. So that's one data point I saw. What do you got? That or anything else?
No, I don't. I think I'm among those who thinks that if pick your number, 10%, 20%. If anything more than that can still vote for this man at this point, what the fuck is wrong? And that throws me. And I think but I go back to saying that requires greater study, not to understand, not to poll them, not to put in a focus group, not to take them at their word, but to try to understand the dynamics that lead to this mass delusion. And it is that. It's mass delusion. On that basis, I can't figure out any sane guess. The only good scenario is a full sweep, right? And anything less than that is a bad scenario. So Kamala doesn't have the Senate or doesn't have the House, then she's going to be stopped with everything she wants to do and see Joe Biden and voting rights, and it's going to be a problem. And obviously a full sweep on Trump, any Trump victory, any right-wing victory in any of the three is damaging. Whenever anybody says that they're optimistic, I order them to cross their fingers, knock wood, and light a candle. I can't bear jinx optimism around me. So I'm a Democrat. So the polls, which as much as I try to ignore them, make me nervous and scared. And I don't know. Here's the thing. So I agreed to go. I didn't think when I agreed to do this, I'm going to Mainz, Germany, the birthplace of Johann Gutenberg, to give a talk at CON, the Content Convention, on November 7, which means I have to fly Election Day night. I will get on the plane at 7 o'clock. We won't have known anything at that hour anyway. And I'll wake up before you all do, and we still won't know anything, I know, but I'll be away from Nicole Wallace and Joanne Reed and Lawrence. How could I be away from all these people while this is going on? So I'm going to this event is run by the government, so they're cheap, so they wouldn't pay my business class tickets, so I'm using my miles. I paid an extra 100,000 miles to come back a day earlier than I planned to, because I can't stand the idea of being away.
You'll have Wi-Fi. You'll have Wi-Fi on the plane. It's not like you're going to land and find out who the results of the election.
A, I want to sleep going over. B, we won't know by. All right, here's a question for you. Here's a data point for you. When do you think we will have the election called? Oh, you think that night? Oh, you think that night? Wow.
It's going to win big everywhere. I'm crossing my fingers, and I'm.
Wear some wood. Knock on some wood for me. God damn it, that was
I'm always
optimism.
wearing wood. I have a giant crucifix under my shirt at all times. You didn't know that. It's on a rope made of Jesus's hair. Yeah, I don't know. I'm just saying things. I have no reason to say 11 p.m. I'm optimistic. I'm trying to be optimistic, but I appreciate everything that you said and that you're saying. Last plug for your book. Why should people get The Web We Weave? Why we must reclaim the internet moguls, misanthropes, and moral panic. Why buy this book? Who's going to read it and love it?
Because it will answer people like Jonathan Haidt and all the complaints you hear about the internet and how awful it is. It'll, I hope, give you some ammunition to defend the internet.
Love it. Love it. Have you ever tangled with him?
No.
I never liked that guy. Everybody loves that guy. I'm not one. I'm not a fan. The first,
That's why I like
The Righteous Mind, was that his first book? I interviewed him for that, and I wasn't that smart then, but I had the right impulses. I was like, I don't know about that. I questioned it, but he's getting so much credit. He works with my friend Lenore Skenazy, who I love, but I still can't.
Yeah. I used to work with Lenore at the Daily News ages ago. Yeah. And I agree with Lenore about free range kids, but.
Fair enough. I love it. I love you. I appreciate you. Thank you very much.
Thank you, my friend.
All right, there he goes. Jeff Jarvis, buzzmachine.com, The Web We Weave. Go get the book, get all his books, follow him, support him, and that is it. That's all I've got for you on today's episode of Stand Up. I hope you liked it. You bumblebees here at the end. I might have rushed through the opening. I hope you didn't notice. Oh boy, I hope they don't realize that I got home late and I had to rush through it. I put all my notes together and I got it out. I got it out, and hopefully up just a little after 6 a.m. You guys are the very best. Love you so much. Hope to see you at tonight's Hangout and next week in Michigan. You Michiganders, looking to see you. Thank you so much for your support, and I will talk to you tomorrow. John Carroll, take us away.
Trees, you got to stand up. Hey, you've been sitting so long, you got the creaky knees, you got to stand up. Stand up. I think you're driving wheels with leaking grease. Boy, you better stand up. to let in some light. You gotta stand up. That's right. We got to rise up. You got to stand up. You gotta stare the devil straight in the eye. We got to let him know it's his turn to go. See it clear when all you hear is a lie. Don't get up off of your butt, get down off of your fence. Even if it ain't a very friendly audience, well, they'll begin to listen when you start making sense. And you stand up, stand up. No need to point your rifle to defend your town. Just stand up, stand up. You know they can't deny you what you're laying down. Boy, you better stand up, stand up. Show your face of every color, yellow, black, red, and brown. She's the place where every lost child will finally be found. There's only one thing to do before we stand our ground, and that's stand up, stand up. Well, the founding fathers saw a land for all. They had to stand up, they had to stand up. They had a keen imagination for a crystal ball, drawing all the plans of stand up. But all they had to go on was the time they were in, with other causes for laws, and since they weren't even sin, they knew that change was gonna come before the change could begin. They had to stand up. All right, they had to stand up. We got to stand up. We got to look the devil square in the eye. We gotta let him know it's his time to go, and make it clear when all we hear is a lie. Why you lying awake wondering where the money all went? It'll be the cost of freedom that'll go unspent. You can see him flee the scene of that experiment if you stand up. All right, we got to speak up. We got to reach up and raise your voice in every way you know how. Don't be toes up. You got to show up. Ain't no better time to do it but now. No need to pledge allegiance to no wanton tribe. Rise up, show obedience to the voice inside, and listen well, and it'll tell you not to run and hide. It says stand up.